Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I'm honestly so excited you're here because we're about to unpack a behavioral mystery that is, well, it's pretty startling to be honest. I mean, let's face it, we all secretly think we'd be the superhero in a crisis, right? We'd rush in, save the day, no second thoughts. But human psychology? It's incredibly complex. And sometimes, our behavior totally defies common sense. So let's just dive right in and look at the psychology of inaction.
Put yourself in this scenario for a quick second. Imagine you're walking down a packed, busy street. Out of nowhere, you get dizzy, the world kind of blurs, and boom, you collapse onto the pavement. You look up and there are literally dozens of people walking past you. But here's the terrifying part. Nobody moves to help. People might glance over, they might even slow down for a second, but no one actually steps forward. So why? Why does this happen? It's a chilling thought, but it's actually a really common phenomenon.
And that brings us to the core conflict we're exploring today. Logically, our brains are wired to think there's safety in numbers, right? We naturally assume that having more people around equals more help. Like, if there are 50 people standing there, surely at least one person is going to jump in. But the reality, the dark, completely counterintuitive reality that psychologists have uncovered, is the exact opposite. More people actually equals less help. The bigger the crowd gets, the less likely any one individual is to step forward. Wild, right?
So what do we actually call this? It's known as the bystander effect. Basically, it's a psychological phenomenon where people are just significantly less likely to help someone in an emergency when there are other people present. Instead of jumping into action, this really dangerous assumption kind of takes over the crowd. Everyone just assumes, oh, someone else will help. It creates this massive collective paralysis.
Which brings us to part one, the spark for the science. Where did this all begin?
Well, back in 1964, a young woman named Kitty Genovese was tragically murdered in New York City. And in the days right after it happened, early newspaper reports came out claiming that dozens of people had either witnessed or heard the attack, but literally didn't lift a finger to help or even call the cops. Now, to be fair, later investigations did find that some of those initial reports were, a bit sensationalized or inaccurate. But the core story hit a massive nerve with the public. It raised this horrifying question: why do we fail to help when others are around? Shortly after, two psychologists, John Darley and Bib Latané, decided they absolutely had to find the scientific answer to that exact question.
So, Darley and Latané set up these brilliant experiments. They'd put participants in a situation where they thought someone else was having a medical emergency, like a seizure. And the data they got back was just stark. When people thought they were the only witness, they were incredibly likely to step in and help. But as soon as you increase the number of bystanders in the experiment, the chances of anyone helping just plummeted. It's a total inverse relationship. Add more witnesses, and the victim gets less help. And this wasn't just a fluke. This finding has been replicated in countless studies ever since.
So let's get into part two. Why exactly does this happen?
The first big driver here is something called the diffusion of responsibility. Instead of thinking, wow, I need to help right now, people unconsciously start thinking, someone else will do it. Think about it. When you're completely alone and someone needs help, 100% of that responsibility falls squarely on your shoulders. You think, I have to do something. But put yourself in a crowd of 10 people, your brain unconsciously divides that responsibility by 10. Suddenly you only feel 10% responsible. Your internal monologue shifts. You start assuming that surely one of these other 9 people is more qualified, or they're standing closer, or maybe they've already called for help. The burden just gets diffused until nobody does anything.
Then we have the second massive driver, which is social influence. We are deeply social creatures, right? We constantly and mostly unconsciously look to the people around us to figure out how we should be reacting. Imagine you hear a really loud bang in a public place. What's the absolute first thing you do? You look around at everyone else. If everyone looks calm and is just going about their business, you're going to assume the noise was no big deal. You assume there's no emergency because no one else is acting like there is one. We literally use the crowd to interpret our own reality. So a crowd full of confused, inactive people will basically convince itself that absolutely no action is required.
And that leads perfectly into the third driver, the fear of making a mistake. Honestly, the fear of embarrassment is incredibly powerful. People freeze up because they think, well, what if it's not actually an emergency and I totally overreact? Or what if that person is just sleeping and I wake them up and look like an idiot? Or worse yet, what if I try to help and I actually make things worse? That critical hesitation, that intense fear of being judged by the crowd for getting it wrong, literally freezes people right in their tracks.
Now I want to be super clear here. This isn't just about life or death emergencies on a random city street. This science applies directly to our everyday lives.
It's happening when someone trips and falls in a busy shopping mall, and everybody just kind of walks around them. It happens when someone is getting bullied at school or at the office, and a dozen people just watch silently. It happens when a car breaks down on a packed highway, and hundreds of cars just speed right past. And crucially, it happens online too. Hurtful comments spread like wildfire on social media because everyone assumes someone else, like a moderator or another user, is going to step in and stop it. The bystander effect is literally everywhere.
But there is good news. Let's move to part 3, breaking the bystander effect.
If you ever find yourself witnessing an emergency, you need to actively shatter that diffusion of responsibility. And here are 4 precise steps to do exactly that. First, never, ever assume someone else has already called for help. Just assume they haven't. Second, take personal responsibility. You literally have to tell yourself, it has to be me. Third, and honestly, this is the magic key right here, give a direct instruction to one specific person. Don't just yell into the crowd, somebody call for help. That doesn't work. Point to a specific individual and say, you in the red shirt, please call emergency services. That instantly puts 100% of the responsibility on them to make that call. And fourth, if it's physically safe for you to do so, offer your help directly to the victim.
I think the most important takeaway from this whole explainer is this. Inaction is not always caused by a lack of kindness or a lack of empathy. People aren't just naturally cruel. Crowd paralysis is a deeply human instinct. It's a completely predictable psychological process. But, the beauty of learning about this stuff is that awareness gives us power. By recognizing these tendencies in our own brains, we can consciously choose to override our instincts and take action when someone genuinely needs us.
So, the next time you find yourself in a crowd during a chaotic moment or a scary emergency, just remember, don't wait for someone else to be the hero. Sometimes, one person's decision to act is all it takes to literally save a life. Your single action can instantly break the trance of the entire crowd. The second you step forward, you're giving everyone else the social permission to step forward too. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. If you found this as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into psychology. But before you go, I want to leave you with one final question. Now that you know exactly how the bystander effect works and how to hack your own psychology to beat it, what will you do the next time the crowd freezes? The power is entirely in your hands now. Stay curious, and I'll catch you in the next one.